And let me step out of the room. Okay. And Cindy, you have your PowerPoint presentation, correct?
I do. Let me pull this up and get that ready. Share screen. All right.
There you go. All right.
All right. So Kyle, Karen, welcome to our presentation for tonight. We are going to be talking about our basic peer mediation, how you start a program, and we're going to follow up with talking about the Online Peer Mediation Platform. And so I'm going to allow my colleague to introduce herself first, and then I'll introduce myself.
Hello, Kristen Woodward. I'm with Fairfax County Public Schools in Virginia, and I have been a mediator for about 15 years now.
Wow.
Started out in college doing our campus mediation program, and then have grown to working in Fairfax County Public Schools. So I'm a certified mediator, so I do mediations in Supreme General District Court, and then also employee and supervisor mediations.
Excellent. Thank you, Kristen. And of course, I'm Cynthia Morton. Currently, I am working as a virtual learning support specialist with our online school here in Rockdale County, Georgia, which is Conyers. Conyers is a small suburb located outside of Atlanta. I also run our county peer mediation program. We have about 40 mediation students who are mediators, trained in mediation. Next year, we'll be expanding to the middle school. And also, I am a mediator with the state of Georgia. So I can also mediate in court. I just choose not to do that right now. I haven't done it in so long. But anyway, that's kind of my experience. And Kristen and I have teamed together to kind of really talk about how to implement a peer mediation program for someone who has never done it before. And so that's what we're going to do. Okay, so without further ado, we're going to move on and talk a little bit about what peer mediation is.
Sure. So, and you can read this slide here. So the Association for Conflict Resolution created program standards, which will be going into depth during this presentation. But basically, this is a definition saying that peer mediation is a process in which students who have been trained in mediation skills and processes mediate conflicts of other students. I think when you're setting up a mediation program, it's important to make the distinction between conflict resolution skills, which are skills for all students in the school. Those are your communication skills, your problem solving, your decision-making skills. And then you may have a subset of students that are peer mediators. We'll talk about the different structures or models. But peer mediation is just one way of several in which you can help peers address conflict. And I always tell my students, as a peer mediator, you're not solving the problem for the student. The problem belongs to the students who bring it to mediation. So that is peer mediation in a nutshell. So, and if you have questions at any point, feel free, Kyle.
Yes.
Raise them. Okay, great. So this is a hyperlink to the peer mediation standards. So as peer mediation programs were growing in notoriety and expanding, a committee of experienced mediators, school and from the areas came together and said, we need to form some standards around school-based peer mediation programs. So my predecessor was on the committee, one of many, but they formed standards back in 2007. And this link will direct you right to the standards. And in it, it gives definitions about conflict resolution, mediation. It talks about ethics. A lot of these points we're going to hit on today, but I strongly suggest that you go back and look at the standards. Sometimes when you're a peer mediation coordinator, You might be the only one in a school building. If you can have a team, that's preferable, but it can be a lonely job in that you need something to refer to, and it's kind of like the Bible of peer mediation standards.
Definitely.
So several goals of the standard. So to guide the conduct of peer mediators, there are ethical considerations about what peer mediators do and don't do. There's also training requirements, because that's very important. Students need to be trained, supervised, debriefed before they can begin to work with other students, because these are real world issues for these students. The standard is also to provide information to parties in a dispute. One part of a peer mediation is doing an intake or screening, and that's whereby the person, the staff member, the coordinator who's in charge, goes to the parties. They could either be referred by another student, referred by a teacher or staff member, and that coordinator has to find out what's going on in the dispute. And oftentimes students don't know what mediation is, so this is a way to provide parties information. And then the third goal of the standards is to promote confidence in peer mediation for handling disputes. And the biggest one is confidentiality. Having your students understand the integrity and importance of confidentiality, and then exceptions to confidentiality, because that's a if you have peer mediators who don't keep confidentiality and they leave the room, that the program is no longer trusted, if you will.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kristen. Now I'm going to take up, and I'm just going to kind of talk about, before you begin a program, if someone asking you, well, how do I begin a program? There's a couple of things they really need to think about. Number one, it needs to be a comprehensive program. A lot of times, I hate to say this, but somebody gets an idea, let's do a peer mediation program. They'll go get a manual. They'll look through the manual. They'll try to train the students, or they'll get a trainer. The trainer will come in, train the students, and then the trainer leaves, and then you have a floundering program. They never have mediations, or they'll have a mediation and it goes wrong, and then the administration says, well, no, this mediation stuff doesn't work. So it needs to be well thought out. Who's going to be your trainer? Does that trainer know the standards? Will that trainer follow up? Has the coordinator been trained? And we're going to talk about what a coordinator does. Are your students well trained, and do they get subsequent training, which is really important. So, and of course, evaluation is always important. You need to identify the needs of your school, and doing a needs assessment is like the way to start a year. What are our biggest conflicts that our school is having? Of course, having the administration on board is the first thing. So before beginning a program, going and talking to the administration and say, hey, here is kind of doing maybe a presentation. Here is how mediation is beneficial. Here's how I, as a trainer, am different from everything else maybe you experienced in the past. And here's how we can make a difference in this school. Leveraging your resources. This is a great resource right here. Reaching out to people that have been involved in mediation, and Kristen is I find her to be one of the top examples of peer mediation in schools in this country. I will always refer people to her because I feel like she can provide those resources and that consultation that someone would need if they're starting a program. Of course, developing quality training is very important, and there are lots of great curriculum out there. I certainly don't want to take away from that. But also making sure that the standards are followed. I would have to say that's probably the top thing. And to add variety, adding the videos, up-to-date materials, different types of training. We're going to talk about online simulations tonight, how those can be really helpful to students. So that top quality training is really important. And then, of course, you got to educate that staff. If we're not getting any referrals, then that's a problem for the kids. So what do we do with the kids at that point? So marketing is really going to be important when we're doing a peer mediation program. So that leads us to the coordinator, and a coordinator could be either in school, or sometimes they could be out of school like I am, and I think Kristen's not in a school, she's in the district office. or not district office, but you're in another office. So it really doesn't have to be someone in that school, but it does help when you have someone who has feet in the ground and knows the students and can take those referrals and everything. So there's different levels of coordination. So the ACR standards really gives a great overview of what a coordinator does. And so I've provided the link, but I also want to just kind of go over what a coordinator would do in a peer mediation program. And they are responsible for administering the program and maintaining the program. And that means supervision of the students. After students have a mediation, debriefing them, find out what went well, what didn't go well, who needs to be retrained. Those are really important things that I find that a mediation coordinator can really help with, especially if a program is floundering.
Question, Cindy.
Yes.
How do you handle debriefing if you're outside of the school?
That's a great point. And one of the things that we can do, Kyle, is this forum right here that we're using on Zoom is a great way to debrief students. In fact, a student could call in. Let's say two students had a mediation. You're the coordinator and you want to debrief with the students. This is a great way to do it is via the internet and the web.
Okay.
So, and we're going to show you how that works too, okay? Now, the important thing is a coordinator is not responsible for discipline, and so we need to tell the administrators that right off, that we don't administer discipline, nor do we want to be disciplinarians. Mediation is totally separate, it is voluntary. The kids have to want to come to mediation. I tell administrators I don't want kids forced to come, because then that's against the standards, the ethics. And of course, it is very helpful that a coordinator is a mediator, which we don't find, unfortunately, a lot, because you've got the experience and you can coach them. Where if someone's not trained in mediation, they're not sure really how to help them. So that's some of the things that we find to be important when you're a coordinator. And so Kristen's going to tell us a little bit more that we found helpful.
Right. So this is responsibilities of the coordinator. So number 4 is mediate the disputes. And again, this goes into the training. So we have a school, this is several years ago, that had the opportunity to send the program coordinator to training, mediation training, because I provide mediation training for our staff, and then she had a team with her. So not only was there one person who was trained as the coordinator, there were support people to back her up. And that's really important because sustainability of programs and institutionalization is a huge factor for peer mediation programs. You have one person at the school who's the champion of the program. They do it all, they love it, but they retire or they move or what have you, and that person leaves and takes all that knowledge with them. So if you can get other adults, other staff trained and know about the program and the workings of it, they don't have to be as intimately involved. That is definitely something that is an extension of the responsibility of the coordinator. Number 5, the recommended standards, to me, they are like gold. They're my Bible. So really for ethical considerations, since you're dealing with people, one of the things we say in the field, as you know, is do no harm. Well, you do no harm by making sure that you have quality training, your students are trained, you as the coordinator are trained, staff know about the program, students are competent, and cases are screened for intake and that they're suitable. Commit to program creation and support. I would say that, you'd want a commitment from a school. Ideally, it would be a 3-year commitment. I think it takes 3 to 5 years for a program to get started, get up off the ground, and kind of start to take off. And I think you get that commitment by showing what are the needs of the school and why is this program important. I think those go hand in hand. Number 7, the scheduling time for the trainings, the intake, mediations, debriefing. This is tricky. Instructional time is guarded and you cannot interrupt that instructional time. So number 7 is what my peer mediation coordinators have the most difficulty. In elementary schools, the way they've addressed that is by training and doing mediations during their lunchtime or their recess time. It could be before school or after school. Middle school and high school, some of the schools have a mediation class. It can be a semester or a year long, and it's during that time that trainings and mediation can take place. Or if they have a home room, perhaps there might be some type of free flex period. That could be another time. But, again, when you want to schedule time for trainings and mediations, staff need to know what this is, because if you're going to pull kids out of their class, whether it's, PE or music, they're going to need to know what it is and how it's going to impact their students that you're pulling out.
Excellent.
Let's see next. We talked about fostering the support. I think parents are a huge, vast, untapped resource. And I think I haven't done a good enough job in Fairfax County with the parent population, but utilizing those resources and the PTAs. Students, the biggest indicator of institutionalization of a program and acceptance is when students are using it more than the admin and the faculty, because the students believe in it, they know it works. So, again, fostering the support. Number 9, we've been talking about the benefits of peer mediation programs, and there is a tremendous amount of research out there. In the last part of our presentation, we'll talk about our online peer mediation project. And in there are websites and research articles to state that peer mediation helps with social emotional learning, decreases discipline issues. I mean, you can name it. There's a gamut of research behind these programs. Again, number 10, you're the gatekeeper. So you're going to articulate the goals. You're going to market it. You're going to say what's good, what's not good. You're the gatekeeper. Number 11, always demonstrate sensitivity, bias awareness, cultural diversity, and prejudice reduction. You are a role model, and so are your students. This is a leadership role. I tell my students they are selected, and then there's an interview process. Anyone can learn mediation and the skills for mediation, but not everyone is ready to mediate, right? It takes a certain level of maturity, attention, etc., to be able to be ready to mediate someone else's issues and difficult going-ons. Number 12, maintain or establish new policies, procedures, and forms. With this, having the first thing I can think of is maybe a fact sheet. What are the facts of peer mediation? What's a referral form? Parent permission form? There are all these forms that there are curricula out there that provide these kind of templates, if you will. And if there are discipline procedures, we want to keep discipline separate from peer mediation, but in our school system, we have our students' rights and responsibilities. And in that, it says that as an alternative to suspension, students can opt for peer mediation, among other things. So, again, getting it into the school policy and having it become utilized.
Okay. Hey, Kristen, just a quick question.
Sure.
When you have a list of options, as you say, for suspension or use mediation as an alternative, are you just giving them one option or many options, if that makes sense? Does that make sense?
So the alternatives to suspension are several options, and they are tiered, if you will. You can go on Fairfax County's website and search student rights and responsibilities. And for example, they call it conflict resolution with a counselor, but it's, talking with a counselor, kind of problem solving, if you will. is one option. Another option on the lesser end of the scale of being restorative is detention, peer mediation, restorative justice conferencing, talking with a parent-teacher conference. There's a list for each tier that administrators have to use at their discretion.
Okay. So you wouldn't come in with that. They would already have an idea or a list of things that they're already using or that are in place.
No, that would be a conversation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Kristen, I'm already on to your next slide.
Oh, okay, good. Thank you. So again, the responsibility, you want to be able to maintain your necessary records. What I ask my peer mediation coordinators at the end of the year, I ask them, going back to my standards, how many hours of training did your students have? In what areas were your students trained? You know, what areas, aspects of communication skills, in the mediation process? How many mediations were referred? Then how many were mediated? And then how many came to an agreement? And it's interesting, about, I would say 99% of our mediations that go to mediation get an agreement. Not every I don't remember the percentage of mediations referred then going to mediation, because I don't remember the percentage, but that shows you the power of good intake and screening and good training, that these schools are able to train their students, do intake, and then a couple years it was 100%. All mediations that went forth had an agreement. And I think that's kind of consistent with the research that's out there. It's a very high percentage rate for getting an agreement when students enter into peer mediation willingly. Other records, if they're, keeping an agreement on file, if the students need to, refer to that. In the state of Virginia, the way we train, the agreement is not a confidential document. It is a public document, but that does not mean that they go around waving it around, showing everyone. It's for their purpose only.
In Georgia, it's the same way. So
good. 14, recruiting and selecting your students. That's that application process we were talking about. Our schools go through interviews. They have teacher recommendations. Some have interviews. So it is important to have that process in place. One school didn't do that, and they had students that were actually the drama people that were the mediators, and I was like, no, that's not going to work. Intake case management, we've kind of talked about. Promoting the program, that's that advertising and marketing. And then 17, a needs assessment is what Cindy talked about at the beginning of the session.
Okay, so we'll move on. So every school can have a different theoretical model that they run their program under. I will say for my program, we're very solution focused. We do the problem solving model, the 5 steps, listening to the story, finding the basic needs, and brainstorming. Kristen, what about in your schools? What type of model do you use?
Yes, so our coordinators are trained in facilitative, but it is problem-solving, solution-focused.
Absolutely.
Okay, good.
Yeah. But, it's nuanced,
Absolutely. I know of one program in New York. Lisa Hirschman runs a transformative in an elementary setting. And of course, there's social justice and the narrative style. And I'm not very familiar with those, but there is research to back each one of these as effective. Of course, peer mediation can, and Kyle, I know this is near and dear to you as it is to me, that peer mediation can also be part of your restorative justice or victim offender programs, which that's research-based as well. So I just want to kind of throw that out, that it doesn't have to be one model. It can be different models. And your programs can be structured different ways. For example, you can have a Cadre model where you can have, like Kristen says, you've got a group of students who are trained and they can be called out of class, or they might have specific times that they come in and do mediation. Here in my county, we have a whole classroom. Well, I won't say whole classroom. We have a classrooms that we have kids that are just trained in mediation, and they actually are available to do mediations within that classroom if they need to, especially in the middle school. But mostly our kids are on call. And so that means you could also have a combination of both. You could do a little bit of both like we do here in our county.
Okay.
So going back to the mediator on call, the program coordinator would then get the referral, and then they would find whichever mediation students are available, and those students would come in and they would do the intakes, and then they would coordinate the mediation and make sure the kids come down and at the specific time. So I will say it's a lot of work, and it does take, having all parties working together and knowing the process and how the process works. So that's why training takes so long, so that you can get it right. So that Chris is right, 3 to 5 years. I mean, definitely. You can have scheduled hours. You can have a mediation room. And if there's no cases, like happens a lot, that kids just don't get mediations, then we do role plays. We can do role plays online. We can do role plays together. We talk about issues going on in the school, and we do activities, and we do campaigns, like against bullying or dating violence or youth violence for the month of, I think it was last month. So you can do other things if you don't have a case to mediate. I mean, you certainly can use mediators for lots of different things. So, which is really great. Make sure I don't get your part, Kristen. Also, you can have, like, for example, in elementary school, the playground is something Kristen alluded to. When they see a conflict happen on the playground, they have their little vest or their little shirts. And you can even have a mediation bench, where two kids go sit on the bench and they're waiting for a mediator to come. So there's lots of different creative ways that you can definitely promote mediation in schools and in all levels of school, even to the littlest kids. They understand the concepts. Yeah. Okay, Kristen?
Yeah.
You ready?
Yeah, and just going off that, another way, I had a school that did, during lunchtime, she had our mediators kind of sit up on stage, and they were there to kind of take referrals. I mean, the counselor was there, and she would explain to the students ahead of time what they were doing. But schools get very creative in ways to, market the program. So types of disputes appropriate for mediation, peer mediation in particular. So misunderstandings, that miscommunication is a huge piece of our conflicts. I say that in respect, top the list when we're talking about disputes. Rumors and gossip, there's a lot of that, a lot of drama, a lot of girl drama at schools as well. That can include relationships, friendships, boyfriend, girlfriend, and then disagreements that span the different levels, all the way from interpersonal to intergroup or institutional disagreements. So not appropriate for mediation. Issues around race, religion, sexual orientation, gender, or personal beliefs, or those values that you hold very, very dear to you, those value-based conflicts. Property and vandalism issues, where there is a right or wrong, where there's a clear harm. That's not, because the purpose of mediation is you're asking two parties to come to a table and to negotiate, to compromise and collaborate. And if you have a bullying or a harassment situation, that's not going to be appropriate because of the power imbalance of the parties. Right. So, yeah. The length of training by level recommended by the standards. So we have elementary and middle school. They recommend 12 to 18 hours. For elementary school students, this can be done Counselors can meet with them about at least twice a month. And so they also do kind of a jumpstart training in the beginning of the school year, where it could be like 2 to 3 hours, kind of an intensive jumpstart. High school, 15 to 20 hours. I say if you can get a class institutionalized in your school district, that's the best way to go, because the teachers are guaranteed that time with the student. They're not having to pull them. However, that is a huge, to have that, you know, takes a lot of resources. And that's very difficult. I know not every school district can dedicate that, you know, amount of resources to having a class for conflict resolution and peer mediation. And then there are some elementary school counselors that run programs, and they can barely make the 12 hours because they have mandatory lessons they have to do in addition to running a program. So it's hard for school staff. You know, they're not just doing one program, they're doing many.
Exactly.
So ethics, having students understand what the ethics are in mediation, and not just having a one kind of time deal, but you're constantly threading and integrating ethics into your role plays, into your discussions, and referring back to them. Self-determination, you know, the basis of which mediation is based on. Part is being able to, you know, to decide for themselves. The impartiality of the peer mediators. That's why it's important when you do your intake, you know, to find out when you're talking to your mediators, because sometimes your mediators may know or may be involved closely with the students that they would mediate. You know, so you want your students to be able to say, I can't mediate that one. They're my next door neighbor, or they're my friend. Mm-hmm. That would impact the partiality. Again, same with conflict of interest. You need the students to be able to speak up and say, I can't do this, or what if they get into a mediation, be able to say, I have to recuse myself. You know, this isn't going to work. Competence, that goes back to training, quality of training, length of hours. Again, you know, I tend to put my more experienced mediators with my less experienced, and then also confidentiality as a cornerstone, and helping students understand what's confidential and then what's not confidential, because there are absolutely your exceptions to not, you know, reporting to a coordinator, harm to self, harm to others, illegal activity, you know, those types of things.
Right, absolutely. And of course, you know, at the end, making sure that we have a great evaluation. It needs to be ongoing from the beginning to the end. I try to do a formal evaluation, but lots of informal evaluations with the students and with the administration, with the teachers, to find out what's going well, what's not going so well. And here's a list of questions that at the end of the year, well, sometimes, you know, at the end of the semester, we will ask, like for instance, we want to know how many cases that were referred, and how they were mediated, and did they result in agreement, like Kristen was talking about. And we'll follow up with the kids. Like I know with our students, we follow up 1 week from the mediation to see, oh, how's it going? You know, are y'all still getting along? And we let them know you can always come back to mediation. We want to know where our referrals are coming from. We always want to recognize those teachers that give us referrals and thank them. We want to know if we met our goals. We want to know all the demographics. Who was using mediation? Is it just specific group, or is it a cross-reference of groups? And then how satisfied is everyone when the year is done? And so this year, I'll just add, we had a peer mediation graduation where our mediators, you know, were given certificates, and their parents came, and it really, to talk about those stats, we really kind of went over some of the statistics and talked about what went well, what our goals are for the future. And so celebrating that is really important at the end of the year. And parents, Kristen's right, parents are the biggest ally, and they will, if they know that this is available and they can get it, they'll ask for it. So that's important to really kind of put that out there. And now we're going to talk a little bit, Kyle, about our online peer mediation project. And we have brought in a very special guest to help us with that. And so we're going to ask him, here he is, this is Giuseppe, and he is going to talk a little bit about our peer mediation platform that we have been working on for the last 2 years.
All right, thank you. Let me just pull up my presentation. Okay. Okay, here it is. All right. So let me share this online presentation. Okay, so now that we know what it takes for schools to launch a peer mediation program, and what are the factors that they need to keep in mind, let's see how the online environment can add value to a school peer mediation program. So in the next few minutes, we're going to talk about what is called Online Peer Mediation Platform, which is a project run by a group of experts in peer mediation, Karen, Cindy, Kristen, and Judy, expert in online mediation, myself, and expert in online technology, Jay Edwards. This program of ours is a 2-year project funded by the James Foundation, initially managed by the Association for Conflict Resolution, Training and Research Section, and currently managed by the National Association of Peer Program Professionals. Our project has 4 goals. The first goal is to provide schools and students who are interested in peer mediation all resources online. And Karen, if you can unmute yourself, can you comment on what you see on your screen?
I see these are the links on our website: useful links, research, best practice standards, curriculum, and media. Would you like me to talk to me about what's under each of those buttons?
Yes, if you can briefly tell us what's in it, yes.
Absolutely. So under useful links, that takes us to other clearinghouses that have been collecting and creating a repository of information. For example, we have a link to conflict resolution education, CREDucation. We have a link to a group called Western Justice, and these are groups throughout the United States that are sort of seminal folks in this work. In research, Kristen had talked about areas that have been researched in the area of peer mediation, and we have links to actual articles there that once you go to that site, you click on the link and you'll find the article right there available to you. And best practices, those are, again, links that would take you to PowerPoints and other support materials and so on. Standards, those are the standards that Cindy and Kristen referred to that were created by the Association for Conflict Resolution that they did a really beautiful job bringing those to light for you today. Curriculum, as you might imagine, with programs throughout the United States, there are different offerings of curriculum for middle school, elementary, high school, and you can click in there and find get your hands on things like from community boards of San Francisco. And then in media, that's a growing button for us, and we hope to be able to link more and more examples of video and other good samples of this work.
Okay, thank you, Karen. So that was the goal number 1. The goal number 2 is to offer an online training in basic peer mediation skills. And this goal is something that Karen and Cindy and Kristen are working on. So Cindy or Kristen, would you like to comment on this? So what you're going to do this year?
Yes, we are actually right now creating 10 conflict resolution modules. Kristen, Karen, and I are working on those. And for instance, the first one is on understanding conflict. and it has videos, it has some quizzes in it. We have a student that's narrating it. So we're trying to make it really student-focused, student-friendly. And so when we're finished with those 10 modules, those modules can be used by a peer mediation trainer to as basic mediation or basic conflict training, and then add to those modules with your own curriculum or your own whatever you might bring to the table. Kristen, you want to add anything else that might be helpful for Kyle to know about that?
No, it's something we're developing, and I think when we roll it out will be when we think we'll roll it out in 2000 next year maybe.
Well, we talked about initially having something out in September. So that's the goal. Now we'll if it doesn't, well, I mean, we want to make sure it's right. So, but our goal is going to be September, basically.
All right, thank you. So that was our second goal. The third goal is it's called Online Peer Mediation Skills Development. And what it means is that we teach schools how their students can practice peer mediation skills by participating in online simulations under the supervision of their trainer and coordinator. And here is a 1-minute video showing our online peer mediation simulations look like.
Good evening, guys. My name is Jada, and we're going to be doing a mediation today.
And hi, my name is Derek Williamson, and I'll be on the mediation today, too.
I understand this is a first time for both of you all, so I'm going to go ahead and explain a few things to you. First and foremost, what a mediation is. We are
impressed last week, and I am equally impressed this week. You guys are clearly very seasoned and comfortable doing this, and jumping into the online forum, which adds sort of a different element. You guys seemed really comfortable and brave, and Derek, I commend you for working with that document there for us so we could see how that works. So I want to
Okay, so that was a short video. And our simulation consists of 4 parts. The first part is the mediation. And during the mediation, the peer mediators can do everything that they are used to do face-to-face. For example, meetings with both students, disputants, or private meetings with each of them. They can also share pictures or videos that are relevant to discuss during the peer mediation. And at the end of the peer mediation simulation, they can also write up the students' memorandum of understanding or the agenda for the next mediation session. Each mediation simulation is followed, as you have seen in the video, by a debriefing session in which all the students with their trainer and coordinator discuss what worked well or not so well, so that students can learn as much as possible out of each simulation. The third part is the video recording, so the students can watch themselves in the video and can relate what they see on the video with what was discussed during the debriefing session. Now, these video recordings can also become a useful material to use during the peer mediation training in the classroom, so that the students who participate in a classroom training can also learn from what they see in these video recordings. And finally, the last part is an online survey, so that the students can tell the school how they experienced their simulation, what they liked or didn't like, and what they learned, and so on. In order to teach schools how they can run their own simulations, we offer a 3-hour free online training. And the first hour is with the demonstration is for the peer mediation trainer, the coordinator, and the students, so that everybody is on the same page. The second hour is a hands-on training for the peer mediation trainer and the coordinator. So we teach them exactly what they need to do to set up, run, and video record their own simulations. And finally, the third hour is a 1 hour assistance, so that we make sure that during the first simulation of each school, everything goes smoothly. The fourth and last goal of our project is an online peer mediation services, which means that we show schools that have a peer mediation experience how they can deliver online peer mediation services to other schools across the United States that don't have a peer mediation program. Needless to say that we pay a lot of attention to the students' safety, which means that as online peer mediation team members, we do not have any contacts with students. The only contact that we have is with their trainer or coordinator, and therefore all students' activities are carried out under the direct supervision of their trainer or coordinator. And we also think that it will be interesting to create partnerships with online, with qualified trainers and mediation centers that have experience in peer mediation training to middle and high schools. And finally, if any schools or organization has any question, this is the website that they can visit. All right, so that was my presentation. Kyle, do you have any question? If you do, just unmute yourself. No? Kyle, you have to unmute yourself. Oh, there you go. All right. Okay.
No, I don't have any at this time. If anything, I'll contact Cindy, and you'll probably set me straight.
That's right. Okay. So, Cindy, would you like to complete your PowerPoint presentation? Do you have any other thing to discuss? Go ahead.
At this point, and thank you, Giuseppe. We're at the end, and we would like to invite you, my friend Kyle, to our May the 7th. Is that right, Giuseppe?
May the, hold on a second. Hold on a second. No, it's May the 4th. You mean for the other webinar, yeah, or the webinar for partners?
The partner webinar.
It's May 4th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time.
Right. And there is a Kyle, there's a s'more. It's a flyer that has a link that you can actually sign up, and just take your name, and he'll send you the directions. So I can send that to you.
Excellent. That would be great.
Okay. And invite your friends.
Well, okay.
All right. Okay. So what we're going to do, we're going to produce a video recording of this webinar, and I will send it to you by email in the next hour or so. And obviously, you are welcome to share this video with anybody who is interested in peer mediation, or also is also interested to learn how the internet, the online technology, can add value to the peer mediation programs. All right?
Excellent. Excellent.
Thank you very much, then.
Yes, we're on the cutting edge for sure. I mean, this is something different and adds to, and it's only going to make it just better. Yeah.
That's what we need.
That's what we need.
Yep.
Thank you, everybody, and I'll see you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.